So it's Sean the Shark. We very much enjoyed the Sean Connery. And there's been a big reaction.
Sure, there has. Let's never do that again.
And I think you should tell your famous Sean Connery joke.
I think we were just excited last time, and
I know, there
was a giddy. Okay,
okay.
Knock, knock.
No.
I've got to do it.
I thought that was the joke.
No, knock, knock. You've got to do the knock, knock.
All right, okay. No, you're right. Sorry, Jules, you did the knock, knock.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Sean. Oh, no.
No, it's me. It is me.
I see, I was right. Jesus. God, we can't even do a knock, knock joke. I was right. Let the record show.
Okay, on you go.
Okay. See, I was only
just say knock, knock, Stuart.
Okay. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Sean.
Sean who?
No, that's Sean. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Dishes.
Dishes who?
Dishes Sean Connery. Open the fucking door.
Boom, play the music.
Welcome to the Good Roundup. Good is a brand consultancy in the UK, and we get together to talk about brand and things that are interesting to us. And I am joined as ever by Chris Lumsden.
Hello.
And Julie Murdoch.
Hello.
And that was our pre-pod. I'm glad we got that out of the way. And now we can talk about some quite serious business. So today we're going to have a chat. It's a contentious chat. I hope it's a bit provocative, but basically, Chris, you wrote an article for the Good website with the headlines, do clients choose us or do we choose them? The long and the short of it is basically we're talking about a new client engagement policy at Good. And it's caused a little bit of internal chin rubbing and scratching and soul searching. And what, can you talk a little bit more about the article and what a new client engagement policy is and why do you think we need it, all that kind of stuff?
The actual thing about having that policy has been in the knocking about my head or our heads for a while. I'd written some notes on it a wee while ago after reading or rereading some stuff Blair Enns had written. And
Blair Enns is, for those who may not know,
runs a thing called Win Without Pitching and is a big sort of agency consultant, and we've seen him a few times and we like his work, and he's, speaks a lot of truth, I think.
He's one of the two Bobs.
That's right. And I'd always sort of admired it, but been too scared to kind of deal with it. But we've also done some other work recently with Rob Bonnet, Co-Definery, another good guy, who's helped us helped us sort of sharpen our own sort of proposition and thinking. And key to that is about encouraging us to be more active in the engagement process.
So let's take that back a little bit. So when we talk about engagement process, how is the current engagement process run just now?
So how I start the article is being a little bit extreme to create a reaction. I say that the convention around hiring creative and design or brand agencies is kind of so hopelessly one-sided that it's a joke. And that's not anyone's fault. It's just kind of the received wisdom of this is how you do it. But it generally is that all the power and influence and leverage rests with the client because they have the money. They make the rules. They define the engagement rules, and everyone runs along and plays to those rules. And it quite often involves agencies having to do quite a lot of work on spec for nothing, and then the client gets to choose the ones they like.
And you kind of run it down as like, so the client needs an agency. They then write a one-page brief, send it out to 5 people. The expectation is you're going to solve the problem with that brief. We then spend, agencies, all of us would then spend 4 weeks, 3 weeks on creating a response.
Sometimes 2.
To present a response.
And the problem is it commoditizes what we do. It reduces it down to really design only and a beauty parade. And that's not what we do. We want to be stronger in that process. It's not a rant about free pitching because that's a whole different thing. No one, as far as we're concerned,
it's more about how clients choose to appoint our businesses in our field. I think because at the moment it's very much, there's an opportunity that's dictated by the client. You are one of a group of agencies who take part in a process that win or lose that opportunity. But there's not often that you get the chance to discuss fit on both sides rather than necessarily it being purely determined by the client and their needs. And I think
the client's right to do that. And I say that in the piece. I think the client's right to have rules around this is what we're looking for.
What their engagement needs to look like.
This is the type of firm we want. This is the experience. Here's the money. This is the time. This is what we want. They define that and they're right to. But we should do that too.
Yeah, and that's kind of the premise of your article, isn't it? And I think, like you say, the principles that we talk about, which I'm sure we'll come on to talk about in a second, in the article aren't things that are necessarily new to us, or the way that, or most of them aren't new conversations that we've been having. But I think the decision to be quite bold and transparent with it and what we want that client engagement to look like isn't necessarily something that you see that often in our space.
And what's key to it for me is linked to the work around positioning. If you're really clear about the work that you do and who you do it for, then you can have an active conversation around, is this the right fit for us?
And that's what Robin was talking about, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
How much you commit to using that kind of positioning, those principles to inform the sales approach and inform how you make decisions about the business that you take on, and being confident about that. A lot of it does come down to confidence, doesn't it?
100%. And I think the thing that is revealing is that it actually differentiates you in that sale process to the client, I believe, because so many agencies are just attached to that opportunity and will dance to the tune because, the received wisdom is this is just the way it is and you've got to do it. But I think
there are conventions in this space that I think it is the received wisdom. This is the way that those engagements have been run for a long time, and I think still are largely in the design industry, but particularly advertising. And I think it's as you start to move into that consultancy space, it changes the nature of those discussions, and it needs a different type of engagement.
And if you're a client and you're looking for expertise, then doesn't it demonstrate expertise on behalf of the agency if you say, we need to understand more about this potential opportunity to actually come to a judgment around whether it's a good fit for you too. But that means that you have to be ballsy enough to go 8 times in 10 to go, this isn't for us. This isn't our best work. This isn't our core focus of core business.
So taking it back a bit, we'll go through what we're changing a little bit more. But if I'm a client and you're kind of we're going to change the way that we engage on the pitching process. If I am of a certain type of client, I go, well, fuck you, because it works well for me.
Fine.
And that's fine.
Then we know quite quickly the fit's not there.
Yeah, because I think that's the thing. It's when we, and I think part of it is about maybe the maturity of us as an agency, which again breeds its own confidence. You know where you do your best work, you know the type of engagements that you're looking for. And I think when you're constantly evaluating the opportunity and potential fit, part of what you're looking for there is what is the engagement process, what is the pitch process, and if it's we want you to solve our problem in order to get appointed, then you have then a conversation to say that's not how we work, that doesn't fit with our philosophy in terms of how we engage with clients and run our business, and the client decides that is there, and that's perfectly within their right. If that's the way they want to run the process and that's their need, fine. If they want to tell us to fuck off, then that's on our head, not theirs.
That's a good answer, by the way. You two have done a lot of thinking. Let's run through. We've so it's on the site. To be fair, where we are at the moment is we're kicking it about a bit. Would that be fair to say at the moment?
I think it's more fine tuning it than kicking it about a bit. Because I think the basic, like you say, the basic principles of what Chris talks about in the article aren't new to our business. I don't think. I think it's probably evolved over the last number of years. Yeah. But in terms of saying no to opportunities, that's not something that is new to how we work.
No, but I still think we'd be, to be honest, the reason why we've not adopted it wholesale is because it's still really hard to do. It's hard and counterintuitive to turn away from potential work. In an industry where you have very little visibility of forward work, when there is opportunity, it's hard not to become attached to it. And actually, Rob wrote about something recently. He talked about agencies have what he describes as an anxiety attachment to opportunities or clients.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is really interesting. And I feel that, we all do, because you almost feel like you have an obligation to participate in that for not just the client, but for yourselves, because
and for the team.
You're attached to it because there's a potential, but it might be big. But what we've learned over the years is that doesn't pay in the long term, because when you become attached to these opportunities emotionally, or you need it for the work, it never turns out the way you want, and it doesn't work for you in the long term. it degrades you emotionally. I think I find it particularly personally pretty hard to get over some of these things because I feel the sense of injustice around it. I think commercially it kills you because you're bleeding resource, and the resource that should be spent on fee-paying clients. And, I just fully believe that in the long term, our margins will be better for it, or are better for it, and that our people will be better for it, and they'll respect themselves and their own work more in the fullness of time. But that doesn't get away from the fact that it's fucking hard.
You've both talked a lot about how it's good for us as an agency. For somebody, if a client's thinking about changing this and they're intrigued, how do they sell that? And how do you push against the tide on this?
I say in the article, it's one of our primary responsibilities to demonstrate to the potential clients that we take the decisions and our value very seriously, and not just for our sake, for their sake too. And by that I mean it demonstrates a professionalism around the value that we can bring and what we do. But it also lets them know that if they do become a client, we're not going to be pitching behind their back. We're not going to be bleeding their resource. I think it shows a sense of maturity and professionalism that I think is lacking in our industry.
I think, and that's really the crux of it for me, I think, is that taking on pitch opportunities or engaging in pitch opportunities, which is unpaid speculative work, is one, giving away our product for free, and it's our service is our product. So if we don't charge for that, then we've got nothing. Commercially, it doesn't make sense.
We've got nothing.
But from a client's point of view, I think it's very much that. It's easy to put in your A team into a pitch presentation, blow the client out of the water, and then, that team's on to the next opportunity and the next pitch. What happens to the client and the piece of work that they're now invested? They're investing in you. They're investing in our team. Agencies, at the best of times, never mind at the moment, are pretty lean in terms of resource. So no one has teams of people sitting around to work on speculative work. That's resource that's being diverted from fee-paying clients, and philosophically we just don't agree with that.
Yeah, so you're better to find out earlier. What is it? A quick no is better than a long goodbye, or whatever the thing is. Something that Blair Enns talks about a lot is that the sale being the sample. So that, the way that the client behaves and treats the balance of power or the relationship or the potential partnership, how they behave in that scenario is what the relationship will be like. So either you need to change that or show that you are not going to go along to ridiculous timescales and ridiculous requests and devalue your own product. You need to either get on the front foot and say no, or argue it to be treated differently. And if there is a reluctance to grant you any concessions, then I think you need to ask yourself, is this going to be a right fit for us? It's hard.
But again, the client benefit, to put it back to that, is that they are, in a sentence, again, I'm thinking about, because this is the tradition.
The team that the agency and the team that they're invested in, that they're investing their marketing dollars or their business dollars in, are focused on their business, not on speculative work.
And they know that they're working with an agency who believes that the project that the client is bringing to the table is one that fits their core business skill set. Because one of the other things we've not talked about here is I wouldn't like to be a client trying to buy services because everyone says they do everything. And we've been in some ridiculous scenarios in the past where we've been pitching in a competitive bid situation in a brand space, and you're up against PR companies or research companies, and you're looking at the client going, what are you doing? If you're talking to a PR agency who say they do a bit of design brand, then are you getting a core discipline there? Are you getting a core skill set? But it happens all the time, doesn't it? And I do worry about, and to me and to us, that's a sign that the client doesn't know what they're doing, that the client maybe isn't experienced enough or not particularly senior, or it's driven by cost or whatever it is. There are signs, there are tells. And you need to be honest. We need to be honest with ourselves and acknowledge them. It's hard. I keep saying that. I keep coming back to that. It's hard.
Sorry, to your point about what's the client benefit, it's that, we are not going to, by asking a lot of questions of the client in that engagement in terms of, and some of those things are, access to the right stakeholders, who are we dealing with, right? You can't run a consultancy piece of work when you're dealing with people in the middle of an organisation being passed second-hand information from leadership. That's not how management consultancies work, and it's not how we do our best work. Some of that comes down to client experience. What type of brief do you get? Is it a self-diagnosed problem that is about executing, or is it a client that's taking the time to think about what their problem is that they would want us or an agency to help them solve. I think these kind of sort of, like Chris says, a kind of professionalism around how we approach the engagement will ultimately help the client make sure they're making the right decision in terms of the right agency to help them solve the problem.
Plus, they want to know if they're going to get Sean the Shark on their business.
I know. Well, I mean, that
costs money.
That is our secret weapon.
I know. Well,
so it's a secret.
It's not a secret because we're on a podcast. So, thinking about the actual policy itself, because we talked around the reasons for it, instigating it. So there's 6 or 7 areas of it. So the first one, and I'll throw this open to which one you want to talk to. So the engagement policy, it kicks off with, we believe that any potential new client's agency selection process has to fit with our new client policy, as outlined below. And the first point is fee for service. What does that mean?
It means the bottom line is you get paid for what you do,
Kind of touched on it already.
Yeah, we've touched on that. So it's such a well-trodden path that I think some, and I don't blame the clients, they don't maybe even understand what it means. But we're giving away our value. If we don't attach a value to it, we're giving it away for nothing. And Jill said earlier, we've got nothing. So our principle is that our clients benefit from the advice we give them, and we charge for that, whether you're an engaged client or a potential client. So that's it. Yeah. So, it's a principle. Would McKinsey come in and spend a month doing some stuff for free to see whether you like it? No, because they know the value they bring. No. So we're the same.
Next point, no free pitching.
Yeah, we've talked about this now.
It's the same, in a way.
It is. It's the kind of same. It's just recognising the value of your own product and your own, our own work, I guess. And I think when we're talking about pitching, that's not to say we won't engage in a competitive bidding situation, I think, but it depends on what the ask is. And if the ask is for a thinking or a strategic response, a view on the business or their issue or their problem, certainly if it's creative execution or a creative response, digital insight, whatever it may be, that's our service, and that's what we get paid for. So we're not going to take part in a pitch where that's expected as part of the pitch response, because that essentially for us means doing the job before we've been paid for it. Well, and sometimes, you've got a 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 chance of winning a...
And clients sometimes say, we're not looking for an awful lot, which is just a nothing, because if you're going to do it, you have to do it to win.
You can't think about a problem.
And you're extremely... I mean, it's interesting to turn the tables on the client in that scenario, because, I think the DBA quote, that your average burn for someone like that is about 10 to 15 grand. And so you're extremely exposed, and it's not. So you say, if you're in our position, let's think about the sensible business decision. We don't know the odds of us winning because someone's always got the inside track. We've invested about 15 grand's worth of cost. We don't know the size of the prize of the budget's not that, they don't, because sometimes they don't even think they need to tell you what you're playing for, and it undermines the resource we've already allocated to fee-paying clients. So the quality for our fee-paying clients is undermined. It's not a particularly compelling business proposition, is it? Really?
And we have also had instances where, and it doesn't happen very often. Usually, if there is a pitch fee, it's a token gesture, a couple of grand pitch fee. But even that is it's still a commitment from the client because they're paying that 3, 4, maybe 5 times over. But we were involved in one a few years ago where the client had paid, I don't know, it's not inappropriate to say, is it? It was paying 4 agencies £10,000 pitch fee.
Hats off to them. Fair play to them.
Because they wanted the confidence that the agencies that were involving in the pitch process were committed to putting their best foot forward and putting their best team on it to demonstrate the thinking that they wanted to see. And it wasn't a full creative response they were asking for, but they were asking for a bit of insight and thinking in terms of what the vision for the brand was. And that then becomes a decision where you wait up and say, we're probably going to invest more than 10 grand's worth of time to try and win this, but you're not going to walk away with it with nothing. It's not dead time.
That shows a client that knows what they're doing.
Yeah. And the time frames on that one in particular as well, where I think we had maybe 10 weeks.
Perfect.
More often than not, these briefs come in and you're expected to respond within a month. And it's like, who has a team sitting about?
Yeah, that's probably one of the best run
pitches,
competitive pitch scenarios we've
all
been
the right
involved in.
stakeholders were involved from the start. The brief was clear.
I think you should name check them.
I think we should name check them.
Gordon and McPhail.
Yeah. Hi guys.
And you know what? Since then, have been continue to be a great client.
And I think that's the point. Once you start off in that engagement, I think that's what you're saying.
Well, what the secret sauce that they need to understand is that the whole agency team's much more motivated to deliver on their business. They're positively predisposed to them.
But it does work both ways. I mean, I think we have a really good relationship with Gordon MacPhail, and we like working with them because they started the engagement off
respectfully.
Yeah, and going, look, we know your time's precious, because our time's precious, and I think it's been a very good.
Yeah, that whole pitch thing. Blair says something in his book which was good. He says it's the difference between being a practitioner and a performer. We're not auditioning. We're serious about what we do.
The next one's interesting. And I think this is quite bold, because I don't know there's a lot of people that would necessarily put this out, but the minimum
easy for you.
Come on, Sean.
Minimum engagement. Thank you. And, we're saying that the business is geared to engage with clients who spend a minimum of 30K on a project.
And that's probably quite low. We had an argument about whether it should be 100. But what the reason for that is the amount of time that is spent with tire kickers, right? So it's the usual, and it's all about the tells. And we were talking about this earlier, about the experience we have now. You know instantly whether there's a lead that's worth. But it's to try and put these people off, because try as you might, you still get stuff coming in to hello, we are good, saying, can you design a logo for my local church vet? And it's like, do you know what? I'd love to.
I'm launching a new brand. Can you give me some costs for identity?
We are not that firm. And I'm not saying that we're looking down on that work. There is a role for that work. We're just not fit. We're not a good fit for that. So we'll recommend other people. We'll recommend freelance. We'll recommend other. But that all takes time. So I'd rather head it off. The sooner they know we're not right for them, the better. Yeah, for everyone, for them as well. And I've had conversations with people, and they said, look, at the end of the day, I appreciate your candor and honesty, because it saved me a lot of time.
Yeah.
And again, that's not to say there's always tolerances within that. And I think it's like, it's like Chris says, it's kind of sets our stall out. But of course, there's a bit of grey in that. And it's not to say that after the initial client engagement, every that we work with a project spend minimum of £30,000. Of course, there are smaller bits of work that come in, particularly with longer standing clients. But I think it definitely does help sift a lot of those kind of particularly inbound inquiries out earlier in the process, rather than previously we've spent days writing proposals to respond on an identity brief that someone's got $5,000, which, like you say,
waste of time.
But there is a place for that, and it's not to say that that's not important work that somebody. It's just we're not an agency that's geared for that.
And I think I've become better and more confident in, even in that first discussion, to say, look, please don't take this the wrong way, but let's talk about money now, because it'll save you time and me time if we're not aligned. Yeah. And it's not a fit.
Yeah, I think in the past we got excited about the work, to your point, the anxiety about what the work is. And then suddenly you kind of, in your head, you've got an expectation, goes, I know this is going to cost X. And then you go, when you get to the budget, and it goes, well, we've got 10K. And you go, oh.
And then what you do is you spend probably the next 2 days going back and forth about whether it's a proper investment piece. Yeah. 2 words that I fucking hate. And which is basically, let's play on our emotion about how we're attached to it to make it seem like a sensible proposition. Yeah. And then what we do is we complain about it throughout the whole process. And whose fault is it anyway? It's ours for taking it on.
We've also made the mistake in the past of, along similar lines of, there's some sense of a bigger opportunity just on the horizon, and you're like, well, we'll do it for this. But then, like Chris said earlier, by that point, the nature of the engagement is set. A client's expectations are set. And so you can't turn, if you're delivering a 30 grand piece of work for a third of that, you can't then turn around and charge 3 times what they're expecting the next time round. So it just doesn't. And we have done it. We've been, this whole policy is out of learned mistakes.
Well, exactly. And that's called anchoring, isn't it? It's just it's a bias. Once you've anchored low in your pricing, you ain't going up.
You can stay there. Stay on that seabed.
Yeah, it's difficult.
But countering that, which I think is nice, is long term. And I chat about, we're looking for long term relationships.
So I think that's true of us and our long-standing clients, is that they're the ones, we know who we can best help, and we know the type of client, and we know the type of challenges that they're going to have over an extended period of time. So we can sense, and they can sense, and they're looking for someone that fit between their need and our expertise, and are willing to let us kind of lead that engagement in there. And it's a journey. It's not transactional, and that's what I say, is we look to cultivate relationships over transactions, then that's a good fit for us. If this is a one and done, the opportunity is a one and done, it's a quick in and out, probably, it's not as good a fit for us.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think, again, there's not, and this, I don't think this is black and white either. I'm now trying to think of an example where that might have been the case, but that's not to say that we wouldn't necessarily be commissioned to do a piece of thinking around brand evolution or values or positioning or language or whatever it may be, and then hand that off to either local agencies to work with for implementation or internal teams to take forward and are less involved in the kind of execution of it longer term. But I think more often than not, that initial piece of brand work will lead to work. So those, just by its nature, it becomes a longer term client engagement. And I think that is where, it's where we're able to add more value, and it's where the client gets most value out of us.
And hey, who wouldn't want to have a long-term relationship with us?
I mean, I can't people.
Possibly think.
All it'll cost you is a minimum of 30k
for a long-term.
And I think the other thing, which is a slightly different point, but I think we've also had experience in the past where some of those initial brand pieces, when they have turned into sort of ad hoc projects going forward, by their very nature have become more transactional. And, you quote a piece of work for £10,000 based on what we know it will take to deliver it. And can you do it for 8? Can you do it for 5? Can you do it? I've only got and a client will dictate the budget. And we will use that we'll cut our cloth and you never cut your cloth. You deliver the job to the best of the team's ability. You don't cut corners. And some of those situations, we've also made a decision. We've also then had a conversation with the client to say, we're probably just outgrown each other here, and there's no shame in that.
And that sense of frustration around servicing that work is the thing that bleeds from the top of the agency right the way through at the bottom, because it really frustrates the design team as well. Yeah,
because they're all commercial to some extent as well. They won't.
The sooner we can, and we're good at it. We're much better at that than we were. Yeah. Getting away from those frustrations and understanding the value of your product. Central to that.
And I think, because the short answer is, can you do it for X? Well, yeah, we can, but are we going to be profitable if we do it for X? No. And then you kind of weigh up the commercials with the client relationship and make a call on it from there, or have a conversation, and the more open and honest I think you are as an agency and they are as a client, the less painful it becomes.
Yep. I'd agree. And I think working with Landsec at the moment on a project, we've been working with Landsec for 11 years. And I think we've saved them a lot of money on that long-term relationship, not just because there's always new people coming in at their end. And when they have ideas, we can present the reason that we didn't do it 3 years ago. That's not a reason not to do it now, but we've got that history that Landsec have got.
You said something the other week about a project, about a client to justify the cost. It's like, do you want to spend $100,000 now to save 400 over the next 3 years? Yeah. I mean, that's the types of conversation we need to be having. Yeah, and they're not transactional.
Yeah, and I think the clients that we deal with, which are maybe sometimes at the end, the transactional end, do appreciate having that conversation because it makes it easier to buy. And I think that's obviously our job. And I think part of the thing with this policy is to help our potential clients make it easy to buy us as well, because they're going to know what we're going to be a little bit more on the front foot.
What is it called again? I think it's just blatant again. I think it's the polite struggle for control. It's defined as this the dance in the engagement, because it's understanding where the power actually does lie.
Yep.
And just because we're the one that take the money from the client in the end doesn't mean you have no power in that engagement.
Yeah. I think as
your power is walking away.
Yeah. And I think because that also then bleeds into, like you say, how the project is then going to run. Because if one of those kind of things that we look for in that early client conversation is this a client team that are willing to be challenged and have some difficult discussions and conversations about their brand, their business, their team potentially, and I think whether it's a conversation about budget and engagement or whether it's a conversation about the right solution for their problem, that kind of it's all
and it's not an arrogance. It's not. We're not arrogant people, but it's a confidence in knowing our subject matter. We don't know about accounting or manufacturing or production or logistics or any of the equally important business angles that our client undoubtedly does know about. But we do know about our stuff.
Yeah.
So we need to lead that. You need to let us lead that.
Well, that leads us beautifully on to our next point, which is on the principles, which is core skill set.
So we've done some work on this recently, haven't we, in terms of helping to sort of fine-tune where we play best, I guess, where we do our best work. And that's around this kind of helping complex global companies rethink their brand for a digital-first world.
If the opportunity fits that broad descriptor, or the client and the opportunity, then another tick in the box for fit, right? if it's a big, and yeah, there might be a question, maybe global should be in brackets, but big organizations that have sort of complex brand challenges, and some of that is inevitably snarled up in the digital manifestation, then we are the right firm for them. If it's more around, and there was one we walked away from a couple of weeks ago, Jules, which was, it was presented as that type of challenge. And we had our noses up and we're saying, this sounds like a good fit. Let's have a further conversation. But when we challenged them on some of the stuff Jules talked about earlier about, so are we talking to the senior, presumably we're talking to the leadership. This is an important aspect for the leadership to streamline the brand and what that's going to do for the business. We were met with this is living with us at the sort of middle level. And actually the senior team aren't particularly keen on it.
Get behind it, as an initiative.
And we walked away from that one. Yeah. Because that's no good will come of that, and we can't do our best work in that scenario. So it's that sense of just ticking that box. If it plays to our core skill set, then let's stick with it. But if it doesn't, let's see why, and let's walk away from it.
So there's another couple of things here about proposals where you can email Chris to ask more about proposals and rate card reduction.
Well, the proposals ones, just want to pick that one up because I think it's also interesting. What's a proposal? Someone might say, well, what's a proposal? And I guess, I put that in there because I think it's important that somebody's able to write down what they believe their business challenge is. They need to supply that to us. And then we're able to at a very, very top level, check out some of the criteria, have a think about it, and then, maybe send them a note back to say which would be a very top line philosophy, maybe a methodology and a minimum engagement figure to have a further discussion. So it's not about sending something with creative in it or strategy. This is about the engagement, a proposal for engagement, and it's one page. It's a paragraph. It's sentences. It's not a document. So I guess that's maybe the weakest one. I don't know if that'll make the cut. I don't know.
I think the last one is definitely the one that when I shown this to a couple of people, there's a bit of but I think it also shows where we are, which is around rate card reductions, and the fact that we're mentioning it before.
You guys have done more of this than
Julie
me.
is. Julie.
It's a procurement, the procurement.
And I think the fact that we're even talking about procurement at this stage is really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think the point that Chris makes is around rate card reductions is that we don't make reductions or revisions to the rate card unless there's a kind of minimum spend of £500,000 in a 12-month period. Now, again, those numbers are indicative, aren't they? But I think our rates are benchmarked against the industry we use, because really that's, the DBA, Average Design Business Association, is still the kind of the best benchmark we have, really. We use some US stats to make sure that globally they're kind of representative of where they need to be in our space. And more, we don't quote projects by hours, minutes, days.
It's value-based
pricing. So it doesn't come down to number of hours spent. And I think because that's challenging in its own right, it becomes a conversation about, well, we think that will only take 2 days. Why do you think it's going to take 4? And you're like,
how dare they?
You get into these increments of time that get challenged by clients who either they think you're ripping them off, or you don't know your business well enough and they're briefed well enough to understand what it's going to take as an investment from our side to deliver it.
It commoditizes what we do.
And it just, so I think, and we have, again, don't get me wrong, we work with big global organizations who have terriers in their procurement team that their whole function is there to demonstrate a saving. So of course we will negotiate and make revisions and apply discounts where we need to.
Totally. Because at the end of the day, you can buy a logo on the internet for $5.
Yep. I'll put some links.
And because this is the thing.
Visit Chris's website, chrisdoesdesign.com.
How hard you have to work to differentiate yourself from that is because the two things aren't the same, but they're presented as being the same. And again, that comes back to your positioning. What type of firm are you? Are we selling a lot of execution work, or are we selling harder to define strategic, valuable work? And that is just harder to price.
So so where are we with this?
Well,
you put something in the blog, and I think at the moment what we're saying is, and I think you acknowledge the fact that in black and white when you read it, it does read a little bit presumptuous.
I do. Well, but presumptuous is maybe good. I mean, we're, you know, I think we're all getting on a little bit, and you know, more and more experience. It's like I'd rather have fewer, higher quality conversations. Let's be honest, rather than courting the world and hoping that 50% of it will come off. I think it stakes out the territory about who we are and what we're like as a firm. It talks about the work, and you know, we're very quickly able to get to value conversations. And I think at the very least, having the conversation about these 5 or 6 points or the whole philosophy of it is valuable, whether it's with a client or with ourselves. And opportunity to come in and we can look at it. We can look at it against some of that criteria and make some informed decisions. And it also, you know, it'll allow us to know when we're compromising on our professional integrity, which is important to me. I know it's not to you two, but it's important to me.
Can we have a podcast about professional integrity? I could learn a lot. That would be magic. That would be great.
Julie's just headbutted the microphone. Yeah. So I don't. Yeah, you're right. So the question we've got is, and we've been talking about this off air. Off air.
Get you. Up throw.
About whether this goes on our website.
And I think it should. Yeah, I do think it should.
I'd like to see it.
I think it should. What I am interested in.
We are probably not the right client for you. Agency for you.
What I am interested in is the other side of this, because I think it's very easy for us to get into our outraged bubble. But
it's not
I don't think we are in an outrage
It's not an outrage bubble. I'm not saying the client shouldn't do their thing. I'm saying we should do our thing. Right. And other agencies should do their thing too.
And I think there's...
How dare you?
That was a wrong choice. I'm just writing that down. Don't say outrage bubble.
But I don't think we are in an outrage bubble. I do think the whole article is quite measured, and even if it provokes the right type of conversation, then it's done its job. Because of course there's give and take, and there's compromise to be had, and there's nuance within here. There always is. But I think setting out, we having a discussion about what you want the relationship to look like and what you want that engagement to look like, and that being a two-way process rather than a one-way street coming from the client, I think is a positive way to start the relationship. It's not about singing the poor wee us agency card. Or card song.
Yeah, because no one's holding a gun to your head to go into these. You end up with the clients you deserve, right? If you end up, with overbearing clients that penny pinch and give you no time to finish the jobs, the only person you've got to blame is yourself, not the client. Walk away from it.
What I meant to say, apart from outrage, but I'll pick my words more carefully, is we have been talking about it within the four walls. I am interested to open that out a little bit further because I'm sure there's clients who have got a view on it, and I'm sure there's other agencies.
I would not really bothered about that.
This is our view.
It's just a wee joke.
Are you keen to know what they think?
I think it's kind of very interesting.
See, I don't know if with all due respect to all of our clients who I have a huge amount of respect for, genuinely, I don't know if I do care what they think when it comes to this, because this isn't about them. This is about, well, it is.
What she said.
It's about, clients don't come to us and ask us, how do we want to run this? I don't know. Maybe they do sometimes. You know what I'm trying to say. I think this is us. All the work, the work that we've been doing with Robin around kind of firming up our positioning, being kind of fine-tuning some of that stuff, and having the kind of confidence to use that to drive how we think about our sales approach, drive how we think about our new business strategy. I think, we're not looking, it's kind of on a tangent, but, we're not looking to add a client to our books every month of the year. We're looking for one or two key client engagements, the right type of fit and the right type of client, probably one or two a year, really. Now, obviously, you'll pick up other smaller bits and pieces along the way, but this is really about the kind of bigger client engagements that are the...
But you're right, Jules. I don't care either what they think about it, because it is about us. It's not about them.
It's not... Well... As a customer,
we should probably note this
as a customer
me and Chris agreeing and
I know that never happens.
I know.
As a customer focused business, we are interested in what people.
Of course,
I know that's why I was a bit.
So we are of course interested, and I am more interested than care.
I'm sorry, Sean.
I think you're right. I'm interested in to why has the don't start trying to dissolve your rage with the care and interest. I am interested as to why it's almost like you don't get fired for going through the IBM terrible process. So what is the shift that needs to be done?
Yeah, that's a fair
both
point.
for agents, because the more agencies that band together around this, the better the work would be for everybody.
But that's not our job. That's the DBA's job. That's a trade association.
But I am still nevertheless interested in what the resistance is internally, because it would help us prepare any kind of thing that we go into to kind of go, I am interested now. It's just the care about kind of going, why is this so hard for you guys to break out? And do you see this? Do you recognise this? And is there a but at the end?
Do you mean
learned behaviours?
Yeah. Do you mean do they recognise the flaws in their recruitment process?
Yeah. And is there good experiences going through the traditional thing where they've got the beauty pageant going on, or have there been problems with this kind of process where you get a more? Is it right to? Can you compare like to like? I'm just curious as to the impact of this. I'm not saying for a second that we don't do it. That's not what I'm saying. I am curious as to when people see it, what do they think, and what is the problem that they've got to address internally?
Generally, when it's seen, or when you get into a conversation like this with a prospective client, it's too late.
Yeah.
They've already gone to market, or they've already engaged the process with 3 or 4 other firms. It's unusual for things to change at that point. But I do think it's, I think what you're saying is what is it that drives the conventional wisdom, and how do you change that on the client side?
That sounds eminently sensible.
Well, the reality to that is I don't know, but I do think that clients enter these tasks thinking they know more about the process and understand more about how to do this than they actually do. They don't have an awful lot of experience in it, and therefore are more likely to adopt the conventional received wisdom around, you just run a pitch, find a supplier, run a pitch, without actually picking apart and thinking about what are the issues with that. It's quite an intellectual exercise, isn't it, to unpack it all.
I think that's what I'm interested in provoking.
I think when we do talk to people about that, I've never had anyone. We've agreed to disagree, and people always respect your position on it.
It's back to the kind of who are you dealing with in that process? Who's driving the initiative in the business, whatever it is? Because if it's being led by a head of marketing or a CMO or a CEO, then chances are the opportunity to have this conversation may well result in a different outcome. That you do have the opportunity then to take the conversation down a slightly different track. But the brand managers, who are the budget owners, don't have the authority to say, we're not going to do it that way this time, because the business dictates that they do it differently.
Yeah,
so
true.
It's just, it doesn't always it's not always about the individual running the process. There are also ways that, again, we've kind of tried to derail sort of pitch processes in the past in terms of having those conversations. Generally, that's easier with an existing client rather than someone that's a kind of entirely new client engagement. But I don't think there's not an easy answer to it. And I think the more of these type of conversations that agencies can have, that we can have in the industry, the better. But I don't think there's an easy fix ultimately.
We are doing what we are doing, and I hope that we can come on here in another year and say that it's working.
I would love people to respond to this and give us their feedback and see what they think and their experiences, good, bad, or indifferent. And as I say, I agree with you. I don't think it necessarily changes the tact that we're on, but as a wider just conversation, I'm quite interested in seeing what people think.
Yeah. Our listeners.
Our listeners.
I'm sure my mother-in-law will be in touch.
Again.
Our whole 3 listeners are going to be coming.
How's the 3 stars coming? Are we
3 stars? We're maintaining our 3 stars.
Are we? 3.5?
No, I don't. I can't remember how much we're up to now. I don't look at it. I would like people to tell a friend.
I've had 2 or 3 messages in the week. We've had people saying, people that you don't. It's quite interesting. People that old clients coming out of the woodwork saying, I loved that episode about such and such.
Well, share.
I know.
Yeah, share, tell a friend, especially something like this. And if you've got any feedback, let us know. But this closes out the 14th episode of the Good Roundup.
Do it, Sean Connery.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to this, the 14th episode of the Good Roundup.